How are y'all doing today? So, with your permission, I'm not going to talk about the hostage situation today. I do talk about it a lot, and if you want to have me back, I'd be happy to come and speak about that, safety within religious communities, the rise in anti-Semitism, and other such things. But since it was my first opportunity to address the Divinity School and others, I thought that something a little bit more universal would be appropriate. So today's sermon was inspired by a teaching from Rabbi Shai Held, who's the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of learning at Machon Hadar, which is an egalitarian yeshiva, which is a Jewish learning center in New York. So Boker Tov, everyone, good morning. We are told clearly how to understand our place in the world in Genesis chapter 1. It was revolutionary. It was revolutionary then, and it remains revolutionary today. For in the ancient world, kings were more than just rulers. It was as if the God that people worshipped had appointed the king to rule. The king would be the intermediary between the God and the people. They were understood to be the image of God in that society. In a world where that was the norm, where the king was the image of God. Genesis chapter 1 offers a radically different worldview. When God says, "Let us make man b'tsalmenu, in our image," the Torah rejects the basic foundations of ancient societies. It's not just the king who is an image of God. It's all of us. Rabbi Held put it this way: we don't have an image of God. We are the image of God. And if we take this seriously, then it's not just the king who's an image of God when Genesis claims that all people are created in God's image. Right? The Torah, our Bible, leads us to the understanding that we are all royalty. We're all royalty. Every human being is a king, is a queen, is a sovereign, is a ruler. This goes beyond the opening chapters of Genesis. Think about the covenant that God makes. In the ancient world, treaties and agreements were made between kings. God doesn't do this. God doesn't speak or make agreements exclusively with kings. God speaks to common people and makes a covenant with common people. The Torah envisions common people as royalty, which speaks to a dramatic democratization of society. Right? You're with me here. This makes sense, right?
Yeah. You in the house.
Now, this does not mean, right, that Torah is completely egalitarian and inclusive. It's definitely not. That comes through more recent interpretation. It still would have made everyone in the ancient world sit up and take notice. Making everyone royalty, it takes away the need to be ruled over. Based on such notions, the Bible warns us about all of the terrible things that a king can do, how detrimental a king will be. The message comes through loud and clear. We don't need a king. How radical. I mean, 2,500 years ago, how radical. We don't even need a king to fulfill the traditional role of protecting the vulnerable in society. Because what do we see throughout the Bible? I mean, Psalm 72 teaches that the ideal ruler will save people who are oppressed or abused, will protect the weakest people in society. And in the Torah, that responsibility falls to all of humanity. We don't turn to a king because it's our job. It's our job to give the same dignity and honor that we would give to a queen to every person that we meet and come in contact with. Try to imagine the respect that we would give to the politician or the activist or the celebrity that we most admire, that we are in awe of. The refugee deserves the same honor. The politician that you hate deserves the same honor. The Uyghur oppressed in China, the Alzheimer's patient in memory care, the military veteran struggling with PTSD, the child starving in Haiti, the child starving here in the United States. All of them are royalty. And just as it's our job to bring dignity to every individual, it's our job to uphold that covenant. And yes, in Judaism we see this covenant as being between God and the Jewish people. But we know that these are not just Jewish teachings. Most every religion and most every person that is not religious understands that it is our job to care for those who are unable to care for themselves. That everyone desires dignity and beauty, and everyone deserves dignity and beauty. And this is the foundation of our common humanity. When Rabbi Akiba argued in the Talmud that the greatest principle in the Torah was love your neighbor as yourself, Ben Azai disagreed. He argued that it was Genesis 5:1. This is the record of Adam's line. When God created man, God created him in the likeness of God. That verse, and again, pardon the Hebrew, which is very gendered. We treat this as far more universal these days. That verse says more than we are made in God's likeness. Jewish commentators point out that the Torah is teaching us that we all descend from one person. We all have a common ancestor. In the opening of Genesis, God creates every kind of vegetation. God creates every kind of winged creature, every kind of sea creature, every kind of land creature, and only one human being. The Mishnah, central to Jewish law, stresses this point. It teaches only a single person was created in the beginning to help us understand that no one is greater than any other. And to save a life is to save a world. And to take a life is to destroy a world. In other words, the greatest principle in the Torah is that we are all created in God's image and that all of humanity are family. Each and every one of us. And when that's a part of our orientation, our basic orientation to the world, to how we view, how we go through life, then it's a part of our identity. It's a core part of who we are. It saves lives. It saves lives. We just commemorated International Holocaust Remembrance Day last week. And political scientist Dr. Kristen Monroe, she studied ethics during the Holocaust, and she found that rescuers of Jews, those who risked their lives to save strangers or friends, that they shared that sense of connection between all human beings. One of the rescuers she interviewed explained that the ultimate goal of life is to help and alleviate the pain of others. Dr. Monroe summed up her findings that for rescuers, all people are a part of the human race. We are all one family. We hear this in Isaiah 58, where we are instructed to bring people who are struggling into our home and share our food and share our clothing. Malbim, one of the great commentators of the 19th century, writes that even if we share the shirt off our backs, we are not sharing it with a stranger. We are sharing it with ourselves. We are all one flesh. This is the greatest principle of Torah. This is the greatest principle that we see within Judaism. Again, we disagree about everything according to Ben Azai. This is also the foundation of all Jewish ethics and the foundation of all human ethics. This is how we understand our place in the world. And yet, millions of kings and queens, millions of sovereigns die each year from hunger, though we have enough food to feed everyone. Around 2 million babies that were born, each created in God's image, died in 2019 due to poor neonatal conditions, even though the medical knowledge and resources exist to support all of them. In Judaism, when someone dies, we say, Zichronam livracha, may their memory be for a blessing. When we think of those who have died due to malnutrition, those who have died due to war and violence and hatred, those who have died due to inadequate medical care, those who have died to our inaction, our indifference, our unwillingness to fulfill our sacred obligations. How do we honor their memory? The memory of millions. We start by doing tshuva. In Hebrew, that means repentance. The word tshuva comes from the root teshuv, or to turn. The way it's understood in Hebrew is that we return back to God. We all can return to God by living our values. We all deserve dignity and respect and honor. All lives have infinite worth. And we have to stop making excuses. We find reasons to hate. We find reasons that they are not us. We find reasons not to get involved, reasons not to give, reasons that explain why that group deserves to end up on the bottom, that they deserve our disdain and not our compassion. We can always find reasons not to live up to this ideal. We need to return back to God by recognizing that all human beings, each and every one, are in the image of God, created in the image of God. We will not be able to heal our so polarized world unless we can rediscover our awareness that we are connected to all of humanity. We are all royalty. We are all one family. This is our identity as human beings. This is how we should see ourselves in our world. To live this one value, to make it primary in our lives. How much pain can we alleviate? How many lives can we save? How much honor can we give to that which we conceive of as divine by honoring those we know and those we don't? It's so basic. It's a teaching that we all know. And yet it's still so revolutionary based on how we experience our world. That was the revolution that we needed when the Torah was written. And that's the revolution that we need to recognize today. Thank you so much